Sunday Live is here with the Average Joe Sports Show. Gary Sharp says we are grapplers. Bill Doleman at Bill Doleman. You can put your business below the Bill Doleman nameplate. Elijah Herbel got his first, was it doubleheader of baseball in yesterday?
Yeah, not too bad.
What's your strikeout call?
Oh, you're going across the hand, and then you're going to pull straight through. And some just go 3. I like hitting with the right.
Hey, why don't you do the seatbelt? You remember last year where people got offended by defensive backs? They thought they were doing like a sword or whatever, but it was the seatbelt.
I'm not sure how well that would play
on
a baseball diamond.
I crushed 18 wings and several beers last night, so that's my accomplishment. Bill Doleman called softball. Gary Sharp's been to the NCAA tournament. Elijah Herbel has called varsity baseball.
I walked from my bed to my couch today to get ready to watch 12 hours of basketball. I might have pulled a hammy.
We have some shout outs for Husker Wrestling. We will get into. Spring football starts tomorrow. And, of course, you have Husker baseball maybe turning the corner. At least it was a good day Saturday for the Fighting Bolts. Good to have you in on the Average Joe Sports Show, episode 97. It is the Pat Engelbert edition.
That is going back to the early 90s.
I think
late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. I think Engelbert was done. Pride of Norfolk in 92. Him and Perella. Does that sound right? Or maybe 93. Yeah. Maybe 93.
Remember the run of Kevin Raymakers? I mean, they had a run of guys from Norfolk, and then Chad Bell showed up, and he was a bust, and they were like, nah, not anymore.
Was there a Micah from Norfolk? Micah something.
As a football player or something you did?
No.
Oh, okay. And you kind of lived up in that area. I didn't know if it was.
No, I never lived up in that area. Joe Papa. That's where he roamed until they said go to Lincoln and go to school. So he did. But
think about this. One other quick thing. Like that stretch of, and I know St. Paul wasn't near Battle Creek, Norfolk, but you had Paul Brungart. Is that right? Yeah. You had Lauren Kaiser. Like you had Nebraska had that run of defensive linemen from small town Nebraska that would come here and would be really, really good. So kudos to you for and then you go way out west. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, then you just open up the door. You've got Chris Dishman from Cozad. You got Micah, Brendan Holbein from Cozad. Yeah. You had a stretch of where the small town, because they all got a scholarship because they got the county scholarship.
County scholarship.
Yeah, and they all came to Nebraska and did well. But good on you. Pat Engelbert, I had not heard that name in a while. But, yeah, war number 97.
And I think Perella's pro number was 97. If we want to go back to Buffalo Bill, Oakland Raider lore.
Yeah.
So,
he was. Look at that. Good pull, Schmidt.
Now I'm gonna go pour a drink and I'll let you guys do your thing. Starting 5 shout outs. We ask you to like, subscribe, and tell everybody about the Average Joe Sports Show YouTube channel. You can check us out weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, of course, the Sunday Live at 10:30 on Twitter, AJ Sports Radio. Give that a follow as well. Justin in first, all the way at 5:09 a.m.
Come on.
Morning Average Joes. I'll tell you who is not average this Sunday. It's the Husker men wrestling team grabbing second in the national championship race and 2 individual titles, Lovett and Taylor, and Hardley picking up a respectable third. Manning, Coach of the Year. We love Mark Manning. We spent time yesterday talking about Coach Manning and what he does for Big Red Wrestling, quarter century of excellence. Uncle Larry here. Patrick is in. Captain is here. Good to have Captain saying what's up. Keegan making his first appearance. Appreciate you. And Keegan asking one of the most important questions of the day. What do I have to do to get my business name up? Keegan, you can send an email to the Average Joe Sports Show.
Guy there is the guy to talk to.
The AJ Sports Show, 2 S's at gmail.com. There we go. Love it. See? All done. Well played, Elijah.
So not only does wrestling have a hell of a night, but maybe one of the greatest upsets in the history of college athletics is Gable Stevenson getting beat by Wyatt Hendrickson from Oklahoma State last night in the heavyweight final. Is Stevenson, who, did his thing in college, then went away, came back, was dominating this year, got beat. I mean, that was – I wish – and we had a lot more vested interest because of the way Nebraska was doing. But you almost wish, because it's probably going to not get the attention it deserves, even though it is getting a lot of attention, is that, man, could we push wrestling back one more week? Or could we push it into April where the sport gets the attention that it deserves?
How does that happen?
I think you make it a 1 semester sport.
Okay.
John Cook kind of floated this. Remember, John Cook thought, hey, why not make volleyball a 2 semester sport?
Yeah.
You battle like college hockey. College hockey is going to announce their field of 16 today. It's kind of going to get lost, but they pushed their Frozen Four back so they get a weekend to themselves. Now, they're going up against the Masters weekend, but it's better than going up against, the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. Wrestling has done these things before. Remember, they had a golden opportunity before COVID shut down the NCAA tournament. They were going to be at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, and they were going to do it basically like WrestleMania. They were going to have these incredible walkouts. They were going to have this gigantic stage. They had sold so many tickets, like the final was going to have 50 to 60,000 people. Now they've gone back inside of, quote unquote NBA arenas. But last night was such a great showcase for the sport. And it wasn't just Nebraska. It showed you Penn State is a friggin' wagon, at the top. And I don't know who is coming close to them because of the funding for that program. And they just flip it over and over and over. But then it shows you Nebraska had a lot of depth this year. And then the damn sport just really took off. I mean, granted, you had the president there last night, so he brought attention to it. It was a good day for wrestling. It was a good day for Nebraska athletics yesterday, and there haven't been a lot of those of late.
And congratulations also to the Jaskers, who had their basketball teams both eliminated on the same day, yet Nebraska did come through with a couple of wrestling national champions. So once again, being in the middle of the road had its bright side for those folks who wear the blue and the red. But anyway, I digress on that. No, I watched the wrestling. I eschewed the basketball. I kept an eye on it because I mentioned before on the show how much I love the NCAA Wrestling Championships, and it played out like a movie. Watching that last night, first of all, you had the 3 Huskers go in a row, so there's just rapt attention on those 3 matches, and Hardy got out to a lead and couldn't hold on to it, and lost to a defending national champion, but. You had Ridge Lovett holding on for dear life with his forehead to win the national title in his match. And then, Antrell Taylor did everything that you're supposed to do. If you got the lead at the end and you can afford a couple of stalls, run around like you're not going to get caught. And he ended up winning the national title. So that was spectacular. And then you just get into the rest of the matches, and they were all compelling. But the way that Stevenson match played out was like a movie. And then to get the takedown at the end, and not since Loudon Swain beat Shoot and Vision Quest have I seen a more dramatic finish to a match. And then to stand up and salute the president, regardless of your political affiliation. I mean, the guy gets up, prays to Jesus, stands up, salutes Trump, puts the flag on. I'm like, this is the best script in wrestling since WrestleMania, whatever.
I do want to give a quick shout out with Ridge Lovett, getting back to that one. The storybook of like the way in which he lost last year, where he takes the top position, allows the escape, loses 1-0. For that script to be flipped this year, it's got to feel good. But the story of the night to me is Antrell Taylor. Millard South kid, Nebraska kid. I mean, he's still got a couple good years of wrestling left in him. A kid who just deserves that moment, going out and doing that. Always been athletically talented. They talked to him post-game about his history with Millard South football. It was pretty clear early in his high school career he was going to be a wrestler. Mark Manning goes and finds him, and I think he was a 3-time Nebraska state champion, and now he's a national champion, and still a couple good years of wrestling left in him. That was the story to me. You feel good for Ridge Lovett. It sucks for Brock Hardy. He got the redemption on Mendez in the Big Ten championship last year, because Mendez is the guy who spladled him last year, and that went viral. And Brock Hardy talked about the mental hurdle he had to overcome throughout most of this season, trying to get over that moment. Gets redemption in the Big Ten tournament, is a Big Ten champion, can't get it done in the national championship match. And what was the most, I would say, outside of the Stevenson match, the most competitive and entertaining match that you saw last night? Sucks for him, but it was a great night for Husker Wrestling overall. And Mark Manning, Coach of the Year.
Great night for Millard South Wrestling. Millard South has been a wagon. And so not only Antrell winning a national championship, but Isaac Trumbull, who, Nebraska offered a walk-on spot. He went elsewhere. He finished 4th in a division where the 3 guys ahead of him are all going to be gone. So he's got a chance to win a national championship last night. It was a great night for Nebraska wrestling, whether you were wearing the N or you were from this state. And it kind of, we know this. What happens in February is maybe the best thing the NSA puts on in the state wrestling tournament in Omaha. And it's a really, really good wrestling state where the wrestlers have gotten more exposure, whether they're going out to Pennsylvania in the, in the non-high school season, or they're going up to the great tournament in Fargo. They've got attention, and there's a lot of respect for them. So it's great to see them shine on a national stage.
And can I also say, I know this is more of a broadcaster's point of view, but I loved the Daniel Cormier and Jordan Burroughs combination in the broadcast.
Yeah, they were fun.
They are a good combo to have. You didn't get those guys through the prelims. You got them in the semifinals. And then in the finals, they were on another level. The knowledge that those guys have of wrestling and the way that their passion shines through whenever they're calling all these matches, from just somebody sitting on the couch at home who I was not a great wrestler, was never going to be a great wrestler. I don't think I had the flexibility for it. I mean, I know a little bit, but not a lot. They made it all the matches really, really easy to consume, and their knowledge shine through, made it easy to watch for the casual fan. So hat tip to those guys as well, because
their enthusiasm had to have drawn in casual people who are, just passing by and stop. What's going on here? These guys are having way too much fun watching what's going on. So yeah, all in all, I'm with Gary. It was just a great night for the sport, and we all love Mark Manning. When you talk to Mark Manning, it's like he genuinely is interested in what you have to say, which is kind of fun because most people aren't that way. But for him to be National Coach of the Year, and look, it's a foregone conclusion with Penn State winning the national title where they are right now. Who knows how long that will continue to go on? Mikhail Sanderson's only like 45, so he could be there another 20 years. But for Mark Manning to do what he's doing at this stage of his career, and I don't know if he's interested in slowing down. I don't get that impression. He's put Nebraska wrestling, at least for this year, above Iowa. Nebraska was competitive in their duel with Iowa. It's as though Nebraska wrestling is right there with Iowa, Oklahoma State, Minnesota, all those great, and they've always been kind of ahead of Minnesota, but to routinely be competitive with Iowa, that really says something. And I don't know what Iowa does, because they've given the program to Tom and Terry Brands, who are Iowa through and through. If they were ever to make a change because they can't stand losing to Penn State and now finishing behind Nebraska, I don't know what goes on with that program, but I find it kind of interesting as to where Mark has the program in comparison to them now.
Yeah, another thing, and Penn State, I mean, from their club program to just the pipeline and all their national championships, the gap between, in the sport of wrestling, in my opinion, the gap between the best and the second best is a friggin' massive ocean because of the funding, because of the history. But there's we spend a lot of time talking about NIL and football and wrestling, or in football and men's basketball. Hopefully this is somebody steps up and says, okay, Mark, what do you need? Okay, what do you need to keep guys, and what do you need to go and get guys? Now they have a nice recruiting class, and it has a nice little Nebraska connection to it. But that's a sport where the big boy at the top spends a lot of money. Iowa spends money. Nebraska spends money, but can they spend money to keep doing what they did last night or this week in Philadelphia, and then go to the next step? Like, can they close that gap at least a little bit on Penn State? and then solidify themselves as the second best college wrestling program, because, as long as Mark Manning is there, they're always going to be in competition. It's going to come down to making the right decisions in recruiting and who you add to your roster, and if you have the resources to go get them, because you look at their facility is great. I mean, they're not saying, man, we need a different facility. They got a great facility, and they got Jordan Burroughs sitting there on national TV, who is a product of Nebraska wrestling.
The other thing that's key too for those programs at the top is to have kind of an Olympic training type center.
Yep.
You mentioned the club program where they develop the younger ones, but they also keep the older ones in the fold as they prepare for each World Championships and Olympics, and that takes money also to pay those guys to come and basically train. To have Green still involved in Nebraska's program is huge, especially given the fact that Jordan Burroughs has moved back home to Philadelphia or New Jersey, where he has his own facility there now. But I remember who was the Oklahoma coach, Lou. I can't think of his last name. That it's a big deal that you have these Olympic caliber wrestlers are kind of on a payroll that you can train with them every day. So for James Green to be at Nebraska, that's a really, really big deal too.
One thing, and I go back to Coach Manning's, preseason presser, and he kind of laid out the landscape of wrestling, where they're at, where they need to go, and their philosophy. And that is, we're not going to go bring someone in over the choice to develop. And he's really shown that through his career, how dogged he's been on the recruiting front. And if someone doesn't get ready, he says, that's my fault, and my job is to get you ready. And you'll love that attitude. But if you look at what the new era is, how long can you stay that way? And it paid off. His method, his philosophy to a second finish. We are out to Mark Manning. We'll see if we get him in the next 45 minutes. And if not, we'll try and lock him in next Sunday. But we'll
let him get a good night's rest.
Well, I mean,
let them enjoy some food.
That's fine. We've got a window here, and I just said, hey, if it works out, great. If not, we'll holler next Sunday too.
And it's also important. This state is really good in wrestling that you keep the top wrestler in state. Cade Ziola, who is from Scott, is going to be a dude, and they got him as a junior. They got him to commit as a junior, and they beat out Iowa State, and Iowa State's down a little bit, but they beat out North Carolina State and some other schools, but they kept the top wrestler at home. I mean, one of the other big moments in the history of the NCAA wrestling meet involved, a local kid. So they're doing it on the recruiting trail. It's just, can they use the momentum that they just gained to keep it going? Because quietly, there's a lot of loyal support. I went to the Penn State Nebraska duel, guys. There were 6,700 people there. The Devaney Center was great. Now, Nebraska got beat, I think, 31-7, and that just shows you Penn State in a duel compared to Nebraska at the time, because that was way back. Was that about the middle of January? They have a shot here to add another layer to the excitement of wrestling, because it's not like they lose a ton of guys that were in their starting lineup this year.
One of the other things too that I'm thinking about Mark that I loved, and this goes back to last year, just to bring attention to his team, but not do it in a gimmicky way. And that was, letting Nash Hutmaker wrestle and making that deal with Matt Rule. And they both know this is great for the kid. It's great for both programs. Now, certainly it's more of a high profile thing for Nebraska wrestling, but to just say, hey, let's do this and let's have some fun with it. Bring the whole entire football team was there. And then, like another movie, Hutmaker gets a pin in his return to the mat for the first time in 3 or 4 years. The parents are there. It just, it was a great moment for Nebraska, for Husker fans, for Nash Hutmaker. I think it made him a better football player last season, but stuff like that, that you got to do, but you don't want to do it in a way that is a gimmick and that cheapens your sport. Hutmaker's good. Tyson Terry, I would think that, I know he took his shoes off. I know he put him in the center of the ring.
He's done. You do not want him. You don't want him wrestling anymore.
Well, if you're Mark Manning, you do.
Well,
it might come down to a senior season. Is like, I still got that itch. Just once.
I'm going to tell you, as much as Tyson Terry loves wrestling, when he put his shoes in the middle of the mat, he was done. It's time to play football.
Yeah.
All right.
See,
I'd love to see it.
It was great about Nash last year. They let him wrestle. I thought it affected him at the beginning of the year because of the weight cutting.
Yep.
I think that was a tough move for him to go and wrestle and come back and play football. I'm okay with Tyson Terry not wrestling. I mean, Tyson Terry finished his career unbeaten. I want him to focus on being an all Big Ten defensive lineman. Plus, he's going to have to get that knee cleaned up. So I think we just need to play football.
Coach Brandon checking in. Brian Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, is in. Kobe is here. NASCAR Eric, our Sunday tailgate is
Homestead today, boys.
You have Coach Brandon calling it. Walter is here. Yeah, Vincent, good to have you, brother, from Napa.
Vinny.
Believe it or not, there are breakfast wines. Good enough, man.
I think those are all wines, but okay.
That's pretty good. Red Knight 79 is in. We'll get into some spring football thoughts. Who's the number 2 running back? Great question, Walter. We'll dive into it. Also checking in with us this morning. Brent is here on the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday Live. Game Dog, good to have you, dude. David is here. Also checking in. Tiger Shark Diver says, morning, fellas. And we'll get some more of your comments up here in the stream. Like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show YouTube channel. Spring football. Tomorrow, we'll hear from Rule and a handful of guys on Tuesday. Running back, a question mark, fellas, behind EJ. We talked a little offensive line yesterday. Level of concern, 1 being not at all, 10 being, oh, dear Lord. When we talk about defensive production, let's talk a little bit about that because you've got some portal guys that I think you can be excited about. You've got some guys that are still on this roster that you saw flashes of that are young, but we know we talked a lot about the polar bear just a moment ago, from wrestling to football. We know what Ty's been able to do on the Combine Trail and Pro Day coming up this week. Those are 2 giant anchors. They're 2 big old beer kegs in the middle that did wonders, stopping the run in a run-heavy physical conference, and then also, too, affecting quarterbacks and affecting timing and all those things. So they were really, really nice when it comes to TFLs, and that's what Tony White's defense was about, was kind of blowing you up on a second down so it's 3rd down and long. We'll see what Butler's philosophy is. We knew they were aggressive, at least in the Pinstripe Bowl. But Sharpie, defense is going to be the question mark, but I think you feel some upside with some of the faces that are back. You have some young talent you can lean on. Do they accept that challenge?
See, I think they'll be faster than they've been in the first 2 years. I think they're going to be more of an attacking. The one thing about Matt Rule that you never worry about is like a bad defense. Yeah. Are they going to be top 10? It's TBA, but you never think that they're going to bottom out like the year, Scott's year that he got fired and that defense just went south. My question about the defense this year is, Ty and Nash were huge, and their impact in picking up blockers, attention that they got, wrecking havoc at the line of scrimmage. And, and they had bodies that were ready for the Big Ten. Riley Van Poppel, I don't know if you guys have seen him. Riley Van Poppel, I think, ate Ty Robinson. I mean, Riley Van Poppel is cock diesel. And so he's got a Big Ten defensive line body to play where it gets dark in there. But you got to be a little bit older to play in there because there's a lot of crap that goes on. I think they'll be faster. But my question will be, if you look at kind of the last 2 years of defense, when they were able to get to the quarterback, they were really good because maybe that covered up a couple of areas that could be picked on. Last year, they weren't able to get to the quarterback as well, especially on the outside. And so quarterbacks had more time and they could pick apart deficiencies in your secondary and they could play the chess match where you'd get some guys in one-on-one matchups and you were like, I do think the communication will be better. I thought last year Nebraska had a lot of communication breakdowns at pre-snap and then at the snap. that really ended up in minus situations for Nebraska. But can Nebraska get to the quarterback? Is it going to be the guys on the outside? Is it going to be a McCullough? Winneri, is he going to flash in his college debut? Or are the linebackers going to be able to stay clean? Because I think Nebraska has a chance to have a really good collection of linebackers who are fast, who are hit stickers, who are smart, and can wreak havoc and force turnovers, which I think will be a big part of this defense this year.
I mean, I think I know the D line is going to look a little bit different from a body composition point of view. I think they're going to be a little quicker, maybe a little more stunting. But I think where you're really going to see a difference, Gary, to your point, is in those linebackers. And you saw a flash of it in the bowl game with Vincent Shavers. Imagine three Vincent Shavers behind that line of scrimmage. That's kind of what they want at that linebacker spot, is three guys that fly around sideline to sideline and hit stick people. If you can find three guys, which I'm not sure they have that, Watson Trent we'll see what he ends up being coming in from Georgia Southern. I'm not sure he has the speed, but he kind of has that natural instinct. He kind of reminds me of a Jay Higgins just a little bit from Iowa, where the athleticism might not flash, but he's got a good feel for the game. He's always kind of in the right spot. But if you can find here in a couple of years, nice Gary. Gary gives the handshake. If you can find three Vincent Shavers types at linebackers, like that's what Nebraska wants for their defense. And I think that would be a really marked change from what we've seen at Nebraska. I mean, going on a decade now, having three guys that fly around like that and can make plays sideline to sideline.
Can I really interject real quick? Fong Wei is saying UNL done, Creighton done, UNL Longman. No, Nebraska basketball is not done, Fong Wei. Nebraska basketball is the only team left standing this month of March and maybe into April, whenever that crown thing starts. So I just want to Fong Wei going the wrong way with his basketball analysis. I wondered, Nebraska defensively, is it good or is it going to be a work in progress with how many cooks there might be in the kitchen with Butler, Phil Snow, and Matt Rule wants to have his fingerprints on Nebraska's defense too. Is that a good triumvirate, or does it need to be Butler's defense with input, but he's the last call?
It's going to be Matt Rule, obviously. It all, with this staff and with this setup, it all starts at the top. Here is what he wants. He wants no more continued drives on 3rd and 8. The guy's pulling his hair out on some of these coin flip ball games where the defense has been incredible. And it's like you're watching a Fiesta Bowl against Florida State, and you just couldn't get off the field on 3rd and 12. They just found out routes or seam routes that, a dig route, the guy had time to throw. They've got to be better, whether they want to or not, at getting home with the pressure. That's obvious. But I like the idea of dropping 7 and just rushing 4. And if you can't do that, make the adjustment quicker, but don't get beat on the hot route, right? So Nebraska's got to be very real. When they talk about the 3rd down conversions last year, and you talk about the red zone defense, that's 2 situational football elements that they've got. They think they've got some guys that can affect positively. And I think Butler, with his NFL background, is going to ask guys to study up. You don't want it to be so complicated. There is confusion, or you're thinking and not playing fast. But from the jumping to a 400 level of, and I'm not knocking Tony White, but I'm saying it needs to be a little more complex. Can you go execute it? But they've just got to get home. They've got to get home and affect the quarterback on 3rd down. Their sack numbers, as Walter south of Philly said, was top 50. But I think they've got some dudes that can get home. I mean, think of the 1-2 punch you have with McCullough, who wants to showcase his pass rush ability. And then you've seen in small doses how effective McGahee has been. Yep. I mean, those are the 2 guys that I circle along with Winneri that need to pin their ears back and go kill somebody 5 yards deep in the pocket.
I would also say, I know he's dealing with an injury here this spring. Don't be surprised, though, if you see Dawson Merritt on the fall in 3rd down situations. I'm not sure he's ready from a physicality standpoint to be a 3-down guy in the Big Ten right now, but he's a guy, you go watch his high school film, the knee bend and the hip bend that he has, the speed he has, I'm telling you, if you go watch his film, there's a little bit of Von Miller in him. And that's a lofty comparison to make. But if you can get a guy that can come off the edge with that kind of athleticism, that kind of knee bend and hip bend, that can be a guy that you can rely upon to get some pressure on third down, especially whenever you can bring him in fresh off the sideline. And it's, hey, you have one play here, 3rd and 7, go kill the quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in some spot rolls, some third down packages at some point this year, because you watch the film, he's got some special traits that not many pass rushers in America have. Got to go develop him, obviously. I'm not sure he's ready to be 3 down, as I said, but some of those traits that he has are really, really special coming off the edge.
You know, Walter asked about Maverick Noonan. So this is a very interesting spring when it comes to guys up on the defensive line. I really wish Jalen George was not out for spring, because I kind of wanted to see what Nebraska was getting. Because there was in a passing comment, it might have been in January, one of the coaches brought up his name unsolicited. And if you looked at his stats at East Tennessee State, you go, whoa, okay. Because he was 9.5 tackles for loss. So him being out, but this is like a big spring. You know, one guy that has not been brought up, we brought him up a lot when he was when he was possibly going to leave, but stayed, along the lines of Maverick Noonan, who is finally healthy. And let's see what he has. Is anybody going to talk about Keona Davis?
Well, I mean, we talked
a lot about Keona Davis in December, but January and February, my show, you guys' show, our show here, we really haven't talked much about Keona Davis and Cam Lenhart, 2 guys that are returning that we've kind of at times been giddy about.
Well, and we talk about Keona in the sense that thank God you kept him, right? Because there was a real threat to lose him. And you're waiting and you're looking for Cam Lenhart, who did his job, but add to that job in year 3 now and be a little more like year 1, getting to the quarterback. I mean, I remember being out in Boulder and Cam Lenhart, first couple of series, dude's got 2 sacks, right? I mean, hey, Shadur, nice to meet you. And, you saw him really flash early. And no, Keona's a guy that you saw his motor. I mean, we've all seen the play of him running down the screen. He got into the backfield against SC and then sprinted downfield to save a touchdown. So you love his mobility and you love his size. And there's so many folks talking about what he can be. And you've heard the S word comparison, and that is Sue. From some of his teammates, and that's very lofty, but sky's the limit for him. Can he stay healthy? And can he really kind of launch? And you were able to just play him sparingly last year. So no, Keona's a vital part, fellas, of how good this defense can be. And he's just a 2nd-year guy.
That is interesting, though, that he was such a topic of conversation when the transfer portal opened, and it was maybe the guy that Nebraska was most paranoid about losing, and then they lost him for about 48 hours, and then he came back, and it's like, okay, we got him back. So now let's focus on all these other guys. But you're right. It's kind of like they kept him in the fold when he was the one that they were probably more worried about losing. Butler going to LSU and Princewell going to Ole Miss. I don't know if those were – you
didn't want it to happen, but you're okay with it as long as you
kind of that. Like they saw the writing on the wall, and Butler had flirted with it before, and finally, does it. But Davis was like, they can't lose this guy, and they didn't. And you're right, it's kind of become an afterthought. In addition to him, I wonder, is Elijah Judy in the defensive line plans, or is he moved to fullback full-time in first and goal situations? That's
a good person to bring up, Bill, because. I mean, he transfers from Texas A&M, and we need to look at the player, not where they came from, because just like any guy that's come from Alabama or Ohio State, how you doing, Tyreek Johnson? I know once in a while you tune into us. You think, oh my God, they're going to be this great player. Well, there's a reason why a big-time program they didn't play there. But Judy he was better than I thought he was going to be, guys. He got on the field a lot more towards the end of the year, and he made an impact when he was out there. He had a really good bowl prep, and I thought he had a really good bowl game. He's in the mix as well. I don't know if Judy ever starts at Nebraska, but he's definitely going to be in the rotation. So good on you, Bill, bringing him up. So there's a lot of guys here that, we're on campus. We're talking more about the guys that are coming, So it's an interesting mix with a brand new position coach as well at the college level. That's a fascinating area to watch during the spring.
Well, and there is some familiarity with guys on the line with Simpson being there. But yeah, you're right. With Braden coming in, that's going to be a bit of a transition. But I think there's probably some excitement. Guys loved pot roast. Don't get me wrong, but there's ability to hear a different voice and maybe have that voice help you thrive. Judy was just real quick on 2 seconds on Judy. He was a quality versus a quantity guy. The snaps he came in and played were vital. He was big in the Iowa game. He was wonderful in the bowl game, to your point, and he was good against Wisconsin. I mean, he did well, and there's so much upside. The clock's been ticking for a while for him, but if he has a limited role or a co-role, that's kind of what you want. You want someone that's been in the trenches for a while to help kind of bring some of these younger guys along. It's not just, all right, let's thrust this true sophomore or redshirt freshman or even redshirt sophomore who's played 50 total snaps into this key situation on third down. You've got options.
And I know whenever you mention Simpson, you're talking Phil Simpson.
Yes.
But Malcolm Simpson, that's the guy
nice
you wish
call.
you had on campus in spring. Nebraska got one with Malcolm Simpson, I think. And you saw how his recruitment kind of took off really late in the process. He's a guy that might fly under the radar because he's not here for spring, but I'll be curious to see what a fall camp looks like. And obviously it takes time to get yourself ready for a Big Ten scrum in the middle, I guess I should say. That's kind of the story with Keona Davis. That's what I'm looking for this offseason with him. Is it's less on the field work and it's more what did this offseason in the weight room look like for Keona Davis to get his weight up, to get up to that explosion level where it's like he's got the potential to be Sue, but nobody is Sue because it's so hard to be as just physically dominant as Sue was with his size and strength. Davis, I'm looking at the weight room, and Malcolm Simpson's probably another story, but man, I wish he was here for spring because I'm really excited about that pickup.
Well, defensive playmakers in demand for sure. Secondary, you have that middle level where we've talked about with the linebacking core, and then the defensive line, important as well. Names on your guys' short list for that RB2 spot. You got EJ.
Jamarian Parker is the one that I think you need it to be. Is he going to be ready? I don't know, but in college football, freshmen can play early at the running back position. If they come in and are what you expect, I know he's coming off a bit of an injury, but that's the guy you need it to be. You need it to be him. And if it's, I don't know, name a running back, you're fine, Ives, whoever, but you need it to be Jamarian Parker.
I think this is, this is an important spring, and down the road we can make a list of guys that are in their third year. Mm-hmm. They always say offensive linemen by their third year in Rule's system should be popping. So a guy like Sam Sledge, this should be like the breakthrough year. Like you look at running back and how they're going to use the running backs, and I think there'll be a lot of catches from the running backs. You're going to run the ball, but there's also going to be a lot of catches out of the backfield. Quentin Ives now has been in the program for a little bit. And Quentin Ives got a lot of run during December, a lot of reps. They like him a lot. This is a big spring for him because Parker is right behind him. And then, oh, by the way, another guy that they liked during his redshirt year, and remember he was late getting to campus last year, was Mekhi Nelson. So the room and the names aren't going to pop at you and go, oh, my God, Nebraska, I back you is back. But I think it's enough competition that it'll make Emmett better and it'll make a solid number two. But I think at the end of the day, Nebraska's got to find 3 running backs. Yeah. 3 running backs that they're comfortable with and then ride with them, because with the 105, your room is a lot smaller than it's ever been.
And I guess why I say Jamarian Parker, because I don't think I enunciated this well enough. It's something we talked about last week on the weekday version of the Average Joe Sports Show, though, is whenever I look at Ives and Nelson, I'm not sure those guys step in, and whenever they're on the field, you go, oh, Nebraska can continue running the exact same plays that they're running with Emmett Johnson out there. that's kind of my doubt with that, where I think you need your running back 2 to step in and it to be little drop off between like, hey, whenever he steps on the field, it's not, we know exactly what they're running because that running back, he's a downhill power counter running back, and Emmett Johnson's a zone find your hole type running back. You can't have running backs that are doing 2 different things with the one.
Yes.
The 3 can be a power back, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 4th and goal, whatever. But you need that RB2 to be a guy that can come in and run the exact same plays that your RB1 can. I don't think Nebraska had that last year. And I think Jamarian Parker is the guy that can come in and do that for Nebraska in 2025.
I don't think they've had versatility at running back for a long time. I think when one comes in, it's one package. When another one comes in, it's another package. And when the third one comes in, it's a third package. Last year you look at it, Emmett Johnson was a little more elusive than Dante Dowdell, who was more of a physical runner up the middle. And then he was going to try to jump over somebody. And then, if Gabe Irvin got in there for a minimum of 1 carry every 2 or 3 games, it was because they needed somebody to bowl over to pick up a yard. But all the packages were different for every running back. There was no versatility. So all you got, if you're a defensive coordinator, you just look at the play sheet. Okay, 34's in there, 21's, whatever the case might be, and you're just calling your defense according to who the back is standing next to Raiola or whoever the quarterback was. So you've got to have, virtually all the backs can handle all of the packages, right? Unless you got to hammer a yard, you put Judy in there at fullback, like I said, and let him run behind him and pick up the yard if you can. But it can't be these separate back, separate packages deals because it's just too easy to read.
Well, do they have a guy? This is the question about the running back room, and this is Nebraska has to be better at recruiting this room. Do they have somebody in the room that can make something out of nothing? If you're saying, man, the offensive line is struggling to block, well, the running back and the offensive line go hand in hand. But there are running backs, and we've seen a guy most recently, wore number 8, that when the hole wasn't there, he got skinny. And the next thing you know, in something that looked like a 1-yard pickup, ended up being 5, 6, or this is the other thing that we got to find out in that room. Do they have a guy that can break away? Which if you look at Emmett Johnson returning, that's not the case. So is there somebody in the room? Is it Parker, who's the newest addition? Along with Booth from Bishop Neumann, do they have somebody that can make something out of nothing? And when they get to that next level, can they make the next guy miss and can they house it?
You know what? Emmett has been on the verge of that home run, and it ends up being a triple or a double. I mean, it's an extra base hit for Emmett on some of those games that Nebraska won by closing out the fourth quarter. There's a handful of them. And Emmett's a guy that I saw more of, that I think we saw more of with Dana getting here, that made guys miss. And there's a little extra giddy up and jitterbug to him where he didn't have a gaping hole to deal with. He got to the second level and then found his way to the third level, and didn't take it to the house, but got a lot of more yak yards than he should have. So what does he do in this season, again, with more than just 4 games ahead of him with Dana? And I think Emmett's on the verge of maybe he gets to that home run level. I know he's, from a breakaway speed standpoint, he's not Amon. I get that, but he's shifty. I mean, I'll take that. He can make enough moves, kind of similar to Amir, right? To shake somebody and get extra yards, which he'll take.
Go ahead. If you want to be RB2, hold on to the football. Hold on to if Parker wants to come in as a true freshman and play, then you better be able to 6-point that football in your right arm or left arm. I don't know what he is, but hold on to the ball and you're going to get a chance to play. I think that's critical and maybe the most simplistic thing that there is. Emmett Johnson's going to be RB1, but whoever can maintain possession of the ball and not fumble is going to play. That's another key. Look at Anthony Grant. He couldn't hold on to the ball and eventually just kind of faded away. Got to hold on. That's your RB2 right there.
Whenever you guys have watched lot more years of Husker football than me. When you think of the home run hitter that Nebraska football has had through your entire history watching, like the guy that anytime they had the ball in their hands, you thought this could go for 70, 80 yards. Who do you think of?
LP.
Lawrence Phillips.
Lawrence LP.
Because you hear some of the older fans say I am hip as well, but I assumed it would be Lawrence Phillips.
I'm one of them. No, Driver's Red Wine had great speed. I am hip was fun to watch. He did have some shiftiness and could break away, but you also had some great offensive lines. And I'm old school too. The fullback makes a huge difference in your running game, because if you have a fullback hitting the hole, like all those great running backs that Nebraska had in the past, somebody to seal off a linebacker and create a left or right move, that's a huge difference. The game's gotten away from the fullback, but if you have a great fullback in front of an I-back, that's going to hit that linebacker. That's going to get you, instead of 2 and 3 yards at the line of scrimmage, like, we saw Dante Daldell all the time get. You got somebody who hits that hole in front of him. That's where you get your 5, 6, 7 yards, and maybe you got the break. When Nebraska had Rathman and Mark Shaleen blowing people up back in 1983 from Mike Rozier, Lance Lewis, Sam Schmidt, you can go down the list of them. Those guys had one mission and one mission only, and that was to blow up whoever was in the hole that the offensive line had created. Get rid of the linebacker and let the running back go make a play.
Can Heinrich Harburg be that guy this year? That's kind of a question I have.
No, it's Elijah Judy. But anyway, go ahead.
Fair enough. But like Bonner has kind of filled that role. Harburg's a guy that I think showed it a little bit in the bowl game. His ability as a lead blocker, I wonder if he can be that guy. It's not your traditional fullback. It's more a guy pulling around from the tight end spot and leading up into the hole, which is a little bit different. But I do wonder, can Heinrich Harburg be that lead blocker? I mean, he's got the speed. He's got the ability. You've seen his ability as a runner to go find the hole. I mean, that's an important ability to have as a fullback, is to set up your block to make it easy on the running back behind you to find the hole. I'm curious to see Heinrich Harburg in that role, because I think that's a little bit of what he'll be doing this year in addition to pass catching.
It's going to be the old Frank Wycheck, Tennessee Titan shuffle, and then snap, go kill somebody at the second level.
I'd be happy with that.
Yeah. Somewhere Makovic is pouring out.
That was my next name I was going to drop in there.
The old cowboy collar.
Insert Makovic here. Put a tailback behind him and let him get 7 yards of carry.
Yeah, guys. As we wind down the Sunday Live, give me a thought on Nebraska baseball. How about comeback victory? How about a 9th inning clutch hit? You had a good start from starting pitching, and Aoki's one of those good arms that SC has, and Nebraska was able to counter in the mid innings with a 4 spot to take the lead and then counter back. So in a season of frustration, you at least draw even heading into today's game.
You can't let and it's not only the top of the 9th, the bottom of the 9th, as Elijah would be upset if a guy dropped the ball on an infield fly, and then USC making a bad base running mistake. Does Nebraska use that and help them today? I mean, they need to win today. They need to win a series before they come home. They get Oregon State next week. Oregon State, by the way, number 6 in the country, got upset by Cal Poly yesterday. They were better yesterday at the plate. We on the morning show yesterday, we were talking about the offense is in a funk. It's the same thing it's been all year. That's probably the best at bats collectively that Nebraska's had all year.
Only 5 strikeouts.
They just fortunately they had Nunez jump on a pitch. I mean, they were down to their final strike. So you hope that the momentum they got yesterday and that feel good. And today, we all know this. It's Johnny Holstaff sometimes on the getaway day. It's score, and score more, that they can find a way just to win a game today and come home with 2 wins, and they have a conference series victory. Because if you look at the top of the Big Ten, it's starting to separate itself. Michigan's off to a really good start. Oregon's off to a good start. Iowa's off to a good start. So I think it's important that Nebraska wins today. But you can't let yesterday slip away and be, that's just one win in a season that's been so frustrating.
I've been saying it for a while. They did it yesterday. I think the task again is the same. I think it's going to be the same moving forward. 6 runs is what you need from your offense. 6 runs. That's the number I've put it at. They hit it yesterday. They win the baseball game. I think that's just what the number that your offense has to have circled moving forward. 6 runs on the board every single game gives you a damn good chance to win. Anything less, and you're going to be praying.
Hey, and they got a decent start from Ty Horn. He went 5 innings yesterday. They used 5 pitchers. That was one of the better pitching performances for Nebraska that we've seen. They weren't scrambling from the first or second inning to figure out who could finish this game out. So to get 5 from him, and then come back to get a win on the top of the 9th. If you do look at the Big Ten standings, it's still fairly early, and yeah, you've got some teams that are double-digit wins over their losses. But top of the Big Ten, you've got 3 teams that are like 6-2, and Nebraska way down ahead of Ohio State, which apparently does not want to invest in their baseball program. Ohio State's 0-5, but it's 6-2 and 2-6 between 1 and 8-16. So there's some room for Nebraska, who doesn't have a conference series until they play Rutgers in a couple weeks, to get right in some of those midweek games against Omaha and Creighton, and then they've got a K-State game coming up on Tuesday, Oregon State. Who knows what the Big Ten's going to look like when Rutgers and Nebraska meet in the first or second week of April? But it's not a huge separation between first and 16th right now. Who knows? They might find something and sneak into the middle of the pack, and that'll at least get them in the Big Ten tournament.
Gotta have it. Any upsets today before we wind it down? I know Florida UConn underway. Gators up 3, Duke, Baylor, Kentucky, Illinois, Bama, St. Mary's, Maryland against the Fighting Nicos. You have Ole Miss and Iowa State. This house will be green later with Sparty in New Mexico, and then Zona in Oregon. Hello, Pac-12.
I'm not sure there's an upset there.
I watch out for New Mexico against Michigan State.
Yeah, I'd give you that one.
Mm-hmm. The old
how do you feel
Richard Pitino.
How do you feel about Colorado State and Maryland? I know it's been the Big Ten's tournament so far. So.
If Maryland, with what they get out of their guards, their ability to take over on top of how great their front line is, if Maryland decides they want to play, they can beat about anybody. So I think they'll
line shifted a full point towards Maryland. So
I think they're going to beat the hell out of Colorado State. Famous last words.
I think this tournament has kind of underscored. I know it hasn't quite caught up with the transfer portal, but this is the year where it's like, oh, the mid majors really are struggling to compete with the Power Fours as more and more teams in college basketball truthfully embrace we're going to turn over the roster every single year to really focus hard on the portal. You're finally seeing the result this year you have the parity between the Power Fours, but all these mid-major teams have really struggled this year. That's why I think Colorado State, you might be screwed, but they are probably the hottest team in America right now.
But let for a minute here, and this is from somebody that, they're going to lose a couple of guys to high majors in the portal, because that's what happens when you're mid-major. You have success, people come and get your coach, Drake, or they come and get your players. I think the one thing, this should not be a surprise to anybody. I mean, all of us that said this is going to be a chalky tournament, our bracket looks really, really good right now, because there was such a gap between the 1 through 4 seeded teams to the 13, 16. If you look at Ken Pom, I mean, there was a huge gap. Plus, if you look at the first couple of days of the tournament, what usually leads to an upset? And I don't consider like a 12 over a 5 an upset, because it wasn't Colorado State favored, I think.
Yeah, they were.
But like the 13, 14, and even a 15 is they usually shoot the 3 well. They didn't. 3-point shooting in the first couple of days of the tournament was really, really bad. And especially when it comes to the underdogs, they didn't shoot the 3 very well. And so thus, then you have to get into a game where you match up and you're going to lose, at least 2 of those on the floor. So I'm not going to go crazy and say, oh my God, the upsets are over. I just think it's a year where we were very top heavy in college basketball. We didn't get the exciting last second buzzer beaters or upsets on the first day, but you know what? The basketball yesterday was pretty good. I mean, we got really good teams that advanced the second round yesterday. And, it's 11-10 right now. Florida leads UConn with 11 minutes to go. This should be a really good game. So at least we're getting second round games are good.
No, they were. BYU and Wisconsin, really tight ball game. Of course, Creighton hung for a while, got hot early, but too much Auburn yesterday.
I think Creighton covered. Did they not? I think Creighton covered.
What was the line? 9.5, something like that.
So.
But the thing that, and I think you guys warned me of this, St. John's and their 3-point shooting is what it is. And it really cost them yesterday, too much Arkansas. I mean, that's kind of the buzz of yesterday, is the 10 seed beating the 2 seed, but the 10 seed being from, the SEC, and St. John's going home, and Coach Pitino benching his, player of the year, who was 3 of 17. And he said in the post game going, well, yeah, you know why you wasn't playing? Because he wasn't doing anything. So let's go with a different option.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday after watching the Kansas-Arkansas game up close and then seeing St. John's up close again this year. If you're gonna watch it with a Nebraska basketball lens, Nebraska got to get some dudes. I mean, they got to get some guys that could jump out of the building, some guys that are in it to win it and have been through it, that athletically they scare you when they step on the floor. Because watching that Kansas-Arkansas game, and especially Arkansas's got some guys that if they're 6'8", they could put the ball on the floor from the wing and get to the hole in about 2 steps and yam it on you.
Mm-hmm.
So I know some of the names that are out there in the portal that Nebraska has reached out to. It does look like they're going for a different athletic profile, not only along with, hey, I need a point guard, I need a 5, I'd like to have a 6'7" wing, but it looks like they're going for guys that, when they need to put the ball on the floor against a Big Ten defense, they're going to be able to ward off a defender and get to the rim, i.e. a Bryce Williams type, but maybe a little bit quicker.
In the bigger picture of this, Gary, you're mentioning how the 1 through 4 seeds are much different than 13 through 16. Is this tournament headed to where the disparity between the haves money are going to be much, much greater than the have-nots and the mid-majors, to where the disparity and the upsets are just not going to be there anymore, where it's going to be so obvious because you're not going to have the long-term player at a mid-major? You're already talking about your Mavericks are losing a couple of guys in the portal, and they're going to go make some money, and they've earned it. But if you're not going to have those players at South Dakota State or at UNO or at Colorado State who are going to be there for a long time, and they're replicating to try to win their conferences with freshmen and sophomores who are trying to get a better deal for their junior and senior years at the major schools, isn't there going to be a wider gap now when it comes to March, to where 1 through 6 seeds are going to be so much better than 10 through 16? Are we looking looking at a big gulf in college basketball of unintended consequences?
Well, here's what will happen. So the Power 5 treats the mid-majors as a training ground, and they always have. I mean, this isn't new. They treated it for coaches and players. So what a lot of the mid-majors, the mid-majors are looking to Division II. I mean, if there are ballers everywhere, or they're going heavy in the junior college. But they also look at a little bit of McNeese State roster development, and you got to have a guy at the mid-major level that can go get dudes, and Will Wade could go get dudes. Do you get the guy that's coming down from the Power 5 that is pretty good but didn't get an opportunity, and all of a sudden in your program against not as consistent high-level competition can shine? And then you get on the big stage, you hit some threes, and you never know what can happen. My fear is, first of all, this year told us we should not expand the tournament. No, do not expand the tournament.
100% agree.
What it's going to show you is the Greg Sankeys of the world are going to make a bigger case, because what do we have? Coming into yesterday, the 32 teams that were left, 27 were from 3 conferences.
Yep.
It'll be fascinating in the offseason, because look at like the Big East, for example. The Big East has revenue sharing, but they have no football. So they can go even more into their men's basketball programs. So watch what happens with the Big East moving forward. But you'll have to make hard decisions on your campus on what sports have priority.
Nope.
And still at Nebraska, football has number 1 priority. Men's basketball has number 2 priority.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be that way. And you need to pass the offering plate a little more. As we started with wrestling, we'll end with wrestling to keep what you got.
Let me sneak one more thing in here, because BYU. So I think there are 2 scary athletic programs in college athletics because of, one, where they're located, but the amount of money from the alums that want to win, and even individual alums. SMU. SMU, guys, is about to take off because there is so much money attached to SMU, and there are individuals that just write checks and they don't care where that money goes because they want to win so bad. Look at football. Men's basketball is going to be the same. There's a reason Andy Enfield left USC to go to SMU. And you're like, whoa, Big Ten to the ACC. It's SMU. BYU is the other one.
Yep.
So BYU for the longest time been a football school, right? All of a sudden they had some success under Mark Pope in basketball, and they've been successful, but not, they haven't been to the Sweet 16 in a while until they won last night against Wisconsin. Look at the money they spent on their roster, and look at the money they're spending on the number one high school recruit coming in.
Isn't it $7 million?
But here's the thing that Nebraska is lacking, and this hurts when you're a state of 1.9 million and you've had donors that have been tapped forever and ever and ever. Nebraska really doesn't have that one booster that is the T. Boone Pickens, right? That will write a $7 million check every year and says, hey, here's $7 million, go get it. You have to probably go find 10 people to get to $7 million.
You do. You have the guy just down the road from you, Gary. He just doesn't dabble in the University of Nebraska athletic department and Uncle Warren. I mean, you have that guy. Someone needs to keep sending him pom-poms and Adidas gear.
Or one of the listeners of the Average Joe Sports Show needs to win the lottery. One of those two.
Yeah, but even
where you have it. You know where you have it, guys. You have it in volleyball, where you have one single donation of $5 million last year. So there's the part of if you win, the money will come. That's why football is so important. I mean, there have been people that have stepped up in the offseason with football, and if they win this fall, there will be even more. That's why missing out this year was rough for Fred, because think if Fred stacks back-to-back NCAA years, you don't think more people are going to come out of the woodwork to support men's basketball because they could see a return on their investment. Oh, we're going to the dance. Consistency in the dance. If the person in the power chair running the program, if the booster believes in him, they're going to dig a little bit deeper. But back to Warren Buffett, everybody says that. And he does donate. I think he, of course, donates more to the academic side. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, wouldn't it be nice to have Warren just write like a $10 million check to Nebraska athletics?
Yeah. I mean, he's done incredible things for the business college. And I'm sure he helps out here or there for athletics, but not to that T. Boone Pickens level, not to the level of Penn State wrestling, having that one dude that funds wrestling, or you have a Hershey's Corporation or a Ford Motor Company. I mean, yeah, you've got Warren, who's bigger than all of that. But yeah, you just
do you have that one person, and we don't have the means, that one person that wants to win so badly with Nebraska athletics and the particular sport that they follow, that they have done very well in their professional career, that they want to support their alma mater or the program that they cheer for, that writes that check, that Nebraska can be on the same level playing field as others out there. Because you feel good about your coach, right?
You do.
And we're talking football here.
The Sherwood Blunt of Nebraska, the old SMU payroll to meet guy.
Hey, I'm watching BYU and what they're doing, and I'm going, if Nebraska had a printing press under the tabernacle like they do, then they could compete at that level. But I'm not shocked by that at all. I mean, I've covered BYU for a long time, and I know what they got out there and what they want to do with it, and they are not shy about it. But there's other schools too. You mentioned SMU, absolutely. I think Texas Tech, didn't they just have somebody drop $10 million on their athletic department at Texas Tech?
You had a bunch of big fish at A&M too.
And Texas A&M, everybody knows that. But I think Maryland had somebody drop like 8 figures on their basketball program. They're talking about Kevin Willard going to Villanova. I'm like, why would you when somebody's willing to invest in the Maryland program and you got them, on the verge of the Sweet 16 today? So there are other schools around the country who are now that donors know I can do what with my money, and nobody's going to get in trouble. Will Wade is going, oh my God, if NIL had happened while I was at LSU, I'd still be at the Maravich Center coaching, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But Nebraska needs somebody like that. But there are other programs around the country are having their Boone Pickens, RIP, step up and drop down some big money to get a suite named after him. But winning will solve that at Nebraska, no question about it.
And I want to point something out. I just dropped this on the stream. Way before NIL and any of that kind of stuff. And Bill probably met him numerous times, but there was a gentleman and he loved Nebraska from Dallas. The Cook Pavilion is named after Dan Cook, and Dan Cook loved Nebraska athletics so much, whatever Nebraska wanted, he would donate. And, his name went up on the indoor pavilion because I think didn't he pay for the indoor practice facility that now belongs to the rec center? Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah. As long as the rec center came with it.
But he was a guy that if you talk to him, man, he was from Dallas. He bled Nebraska. I mean, he loved Osborne. He loved Nebraska football. He was in before Nebraska was rolling. And he was a faucet of money. Now, Dan passed away a while ago. And I don't know, what he left Nebraska, but yeah, they just don't have that whale. Because we outside of a $5 million donation to volleyball from, the Rod Yates, Gretna Crossing, that group, you haven't heard really like a huge donation, because I think it's important if you get one of those to publicize it. Everybody else in the country does.
Well, we can go whale shopping next week.
But this is also for, as we get into portal season for basketball, you can't use NIL as a scapegoat. At some point, you got to look in the mirror and go, man, we didn't do a good job coaching. We put the roster together. We didn't put them in a good enough position, or the players didn't do their job when they needed to do their job. Sometimes NIL becomes a scapegoat.
Yep. Accountability. Absolutely. That is the Iron Horse. It's Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, the Sunday live edition of the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe. YouTube, where you find us on the weekends. And, of course, AJ Sports Radio on Twitter. Can send us an email or your business's information via Gmail, the AJ Sports Show. That's 2 S's at gmail.com. And we'll roll our sleeves up. Elijah and I back at it tomorrow at 4 locally. Sharpie back at it tomorrow morning locally at 6 a.m. out of KOZN in Omaha. We're on KFOR. Bill Doleman back from spring break, ready to mold the minds of the future generation. And we'll talk to you next time on the.
You got about 6 weeks left, Bill, of school, and then you look so much relieved, and we'll see the younger Bill.
Yeah. I've got the countdown. I've got the countdown going on. Yeah, without a doubt.
Tomorrow's lecture on the importance of the fullback.
Class starts at 9:45. Be there at 9:30.
Bill, I think you should send one of your students to the first time that Rule is available with the media and pull out the roster and go, I was looking through the roster, coach. What happened to Liebentritt? Where did the fullbacks go? Is Bonner going to still be a fullback?
Fullback tribute.
Send McMaster to do that,
Yeah, he probably would. That's
He'd probably really enjoy that, actually.
I got a question in. Yes.
He'd show up with a cowboy collar on and eye black. All right. We'll talk to you next time here on the Average Joe Sports Show. Thank you.